Planet Reddit. Today's story is...
My mother-in-law tried to get rid of my allergic son the day before my wedding. I never imagined that her voice messages would reveal her true intention. I am 34 years old, and although I should be happy that I recently got married, my emotions are completely mixed up. My wedding to Henry, 36, was wonderful in many ways, but it is difficult to forget everything that happened. To give you some context, I have a 7-year-old son called Ben from my first marriage to Finn, who died unexpectedly when Ben was just 2 years old, leaving me to raise him alone. From the moment he was born, Ben became the center of my world. Losing Finn was incredibly painful, and there are no words to fully describe that loss. Ben was too young to understand why his dad didn't come home anymore. It broke my heart every time he asked about Finn or pointed to his picture with that confused look on his face. As difficult as it was, Ben was my reason to keep going. Being a single mother was a real challenge. I had to balance a full-time job, pay the bills, and bear the emotional weight of trying to be everything for Ben. I barely had time for myself, and honestly, I didn't even consider the possibility of dating. My priority was to make sure Ben felt protected and loved. That's why meeting Henry was completely unexpected. I wasn't looking for a relationship when I ran into him one afternoon in the park. I had taken Ben to play, and Henry was there with his niece Violet, also 7 years old. Ben and Violet hit it off immediately. Henry and I ended up sitting on a nearby bench, chatting while keeping an eye on the children. There was something about him, his calm and steady presence, that made me feel instantly comfortable. He listened to me talk about Ben and Finn, not with pity, but with genuine interest. After that day, Henry and I continued to meet up. It turned out he lived nearby, and we soon began to intentionally meet up to coordinate playdates with the boys. What impressed me most about Henry was how naturally he connected with Ben. He never treated him like someone else's son. Instead, he saw him as a bright, curious child who simply needed someone to be there for him. As our relationship grew, Henry became more than just my boyfriend. He became a father figure to Ben. He attended school events, helped with bedtime stories, and learned to use an EpiPen for Ben's peanut allergy without being asked. He didn't have to do any of that, but he wanted to. For the first time since Finn died, I felt like I could breathe. Henry wasn't just there for me, he was there for us, and that made all the difference. The whole problem boils down to my mother-in-law, Ida, a 60-year-old woman. Ida has always been a tough and stubborn person who places a lot of importance on appearances and maintaining control. Her advice often sounded more like criticism, and she had extremely high expectations of everyone around her. When Henry introduced me to Ida for the first time, she made her feelings about me clear, however subtle she was about it. I was not the ideal wife she had in mind for her son. As a widow with a young child, I did not fit her image of someone who could commit fully to Henry without burdens. She was polite but distant, and her cold attitude showed that she did not consider Ben and I part of her family. Ida never bothered to get to know Ben or build any kind of relationship with him. While Henry became a father figure, Ida seemed to think she was taking on too much responsibility. She disguised her comments as concern, but it was clear that she was judging him. At family events, Ida either completely ignored Ben or made comments about how children need their real parents. Once, she said in a crowded room that Henry shouldn't feel obliged to share his resources with another man's son. She was barely trying to hide her displeasure. Ida's problem wasn't just with me. It was that Henry's life didn't align with her vision for him. She wanted to control how everything played out, and our family didn't fit her idea of perfection. Over time, her actions only created a rift between us, making her disapproval impossible to ignore. Avery, my 39-year-old sister-in-law, has always been a source of kindness and support in my life. From the moment I met her, she welcomed me with open arms, treating Ben and me as family without hesitation. Whereas other relatives were distant or critical, Avery went out of her way to make us feel included. She has been a true friend, whether offering advice, lending a sympathetic ear, or stepping in to defend us when necessary. She was always available. Her daughter Violet shares her mother's charm and is one of Ben's best friends. Avery constantly reminds me that I shouldn't pay attention to her mother and her comments. A week before the wedding, Ida surprisingly got in touch. She was being sweet, almost eerily sweet. She said she wanted to build a better relationship with Ben before the wedding and invited him to spend the day with her and Violet. She promised to take them out for lunch, to the cinema, and for ice cream. A fun day out for the kids. I was taken aback. This was so out of character for Ida that it seemed suspicious. Ever the optimist, Henry thought it was a sign that she was finally giving in. He encouraged me to give her a chance, to allow her to prove that she could be a positive influence in Ben's life. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Ben was thrilled. He had always wanted Ida to love him. The idea of a day with her and Violet excited him. That morning, I prepared his EpiPen. He has a severe peanut allergy, and I went over his allergy protocol again, even though Ida knew it. I also reminded him to call me if any problems arose. During the day, I texted Ida a couple of times to see how things were going. Her replies were brief, "Everything is fine," or "They are having fun." She usually replies to messages with really long paragraphs, so when I saw how short her replies were, I got worried. But I tried to convince myself that maybe she was just busy concentrating on the children. That night, I received a call from Violet. Her voice was trembling and she was crying so hard that I could hardly understand her. What I did manage to make out sent a chill down my spine. She said that Ben hadn't woken up, so Ida had left him behind. I stood there paralyzed, my heart racing. What did she mean? Left behind? I asked her where they were. Between sobs, Violet gave me the address of a park about 20 minutes away. Henry and I set off as fast as we could. When we arrived, I saw Ben sitting on a bench with a park security guard. He was pale. His mouth was swollen, and he looked like he had been crying. The guard explained that he had found Ben alone, crying and visibly ill, and had been trying to keep him calm. We rushed Ben to the hospital, where the doctors confirmed that he had had an allergic reaction. They said he was lucky he hadn't gone into anaphylaxis, but his symptoms were severe enough to require immediate treatment. It turns out that Ida had taken the children to a bakery and allowed Ben to eat a cookie that probably contained traces of peanuts. Despite knowing about his allergy, she didn't bother to check or make sure he was safe. When he started to show symptoms, difficulty breathing and dizziness, she panicked. Instead of seeking help, she abandoned him. She abandoned my son. She told Violet to keep quiet about what had happened and left Ben as if it were nothing. The hospital kept Ben in overnight for observation. I barely slept and stayed by his side all night. How could anyone be so cruel, so insensitive? Henry was furious. As soon as Ben was stable, he called his mother demanding an explanation. Ida didn't answer but sent a message with a flimsy excuse. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. No apologies. No acknowledgement of the danger she had put Ben in. Henry decided to report her to the police. He said it was about holding her accountable and making sure she couldn't hurt anyone else. I agreed. What if the security guard hadn't found Ben? What if we'd arrived too late? Ida was arrested. She called Henry from prison, begging him to post her bail, but he refused. When Henry decided not to post bail, Ida turned to Avery, but she too refused. Avery was furious, not only because of what Ida did to Ben, but also because she involved Violet by asking her to lie. As a mother, Avery couldn't ignore the fact that Ida put Violet in such a difficult situation. This situation made Avery draw a firm line with her mother. In the past, she had tried to remain calm, but this time Ida's behavior went too far. The wedding went ahead without a hitch, but it had a bittersweet atmosphere. Henry and I did our best to focus on each other and our family, but the weight of recent events never left our minds. Now Ida was in jail, facing charges for what she did. I feel no guilt. Since Henry and I started a relationship, I have treated and respected Ida no matter what she did, but finally she went too far, and there is no going back. I cannot imagine ever forgiving her for what she did to my son. So am I the bad guy for letting my mother-in-law stay in jail instead of bailing her out? Update 1. Hi, I'm back with an update. It's been about a month since our wedding. We had the most amazing honeymoon ever. Now about Ida. Her sister posted her bail a week or two ago, and of course, she got in touch with us. I wasn't surprised to hear from her. She called Henry about 3 days ago. Henry saw the call, but didn't answer. She already knew that if she answered, it would only lead to her mother trying to make him feel guilty and saying terrible things about me and Ben. So Ida left multiple messages. In her first messages, she talked about how angry she was and how bad she felt about herself. She accused Henry and Avery of being ungrateful, acting as if all the things she had done for them over the years should give her free rein for the damage caused. For Ida, nothing was enough. She constantly made Henry feel like he owed her everything, even though she had manipulated him emotionally all his life. She didn't see herself as a person who made mistakes. She considered herself someone entitled to devotion from others because of all she had sacrificed. The fact that Henry and Avery finally began to distance themselves from her did not sit well with her, and she hated it. As her anger grew, she tried a different tactic: guilt. She told Henry that he owed his life to her, as if she had made all these sacrifices for him, and now it was his turn to give something back. She presented herself as a martyr, someone who had given up her life for him. The particular comment about being a slave wife was a reminder of how she saw her relationship with her late husband, as if she had been nothing more than a servant to him and to everyone around her. This was typical of Ida. She never acknowledged how much damage she had caused by imposing unrealistic expectations on those she supposedly loved. Everything she did for Henry was always conditional. She did it because she expected something in return. The more she spoke, the more desperate she became. She couldn't accept that Henry had moved on, that he had chosen me over his vision of how his life should be. She said that Henry was blinded by love, suggesting that his feelings for me were clouding his judgment. She called me a witch, implying that I had some kind of control over him and that I had ruined his way of thinking. She didn't seem to care that Henry loved me for who I really am, or that we had created a life together. To Ida, I wasn't a loving wife, I was a villain who had manipulated him into cutting ties with his family. Her constant need to be the center of Henry's world made it impossible for her to understand that he had found happiness without her approval. What really shocked me was when she compared me to Henry's ex-girlfriend. She had always preferred Henry's ex, and now she was saying it openly that he should have married her. She claimed that his ex was exactly like her, apparently this sweet person who would have been a perfect wife for him. But what she really meant was that Henry's ex was controlling and demanding, just as Ida had always been with Henry. She saw this woman as someone who could handle Henry, someone who would keep him under control in the same way she had tried to do for years. She couldn't accept that Henry had chosen someone different, someone who wasn't like her and who didn't need to control him to feel important. As if that wasn't bad enough, the messages took a darker turn. Ida started calling me terrible names, hurling every offense she could think of at me. The more I listened, the more outraged I felt. She had been toxic for years, but hearing her speak so cruelly about me was one thing. Hearing her talk about Ben was completely different. She called my innocent 7-year-old son hurtful names, calling him useless and someone else's discarded baggage. I was devastated to hear her speak of him in this way. Ida didn't hold back. Her messages became even more bleak. At the end of one particularly horrible one, she actually said that she hoped something bad had happened to Ben that day. She put it in such vile terms. I couldn't believe the audacity of her words. It sent shivers down my spine. To hear someone wish harm on a child was just disturbing. There was no excuse for such bitterness, and it made it clear how lost Ida really was. It wasn't just about control or even Henry anymore. It was about her desire to hurt those who didn't conform to her twisted version of reality. In that moment, I realized that I couldn't allow Ida to be around our family anymore. Those voicemails weren't just her letting off steam. They showed who she really was. She had always been manipulative and toxic, but now she felt like a real threat to us. Henry had already said he was done with her, but hearing her say such horrible things made it clear that we needed to cut all ties. Anyone who could talk that way about a child, especially a family member, didn't belong in our lives. So Henry sent her a message asking her to stay away from our family and blocked her. We think he did the right thing. I was still willing to believe that Ida didn't know that what she bought for Ben had traces of peanut, but now I'm convinced that she did it on purpose. And even if she didn't know, it doesn't matter. She left my son alone when he was suffering. She ran away. She deserves whatever happens to her, and worse, I'm just upset that we didn't take more action. And I honestly think we should do something. Update 2. Hi, it's been a week since my last update, and things have only gotten worse. Avery called us very late the night before last. She said that after Ida got out of jail, she immediately started flooding her with text messages, dozens of them. At first, Avery hadn't replied to any of them. She knew that replying to Ida would only cause more drama, but then she went through the messages. Ida had written pages and pages of accusations. She accused Avery of being ungrateful, something we had all heard before. For Ida, it was as if no matter how much Avery or anyone else had done for her, it was never enough. She felt entitled to support. And when she didn't get it, she turned it on everyone around her. Ida had this strange ability to make others feel like they owed her something. Especially after all the damage she had caused, she presented herself as a victim, rather than taking responsibility, expecting sympathy while completely ignoring the damage caused. Ida also wrote about how much she had sacrificed for everyone over the years, although she never gave specific details. Avery, who had put up with this kind of behavior for years, no longer accepted it. She knew her mother too well. Then she wrote about me, obviously. Ida had always pointed to me as the culprit in her strained relationship with Henry, but this time she took it to another level. She blamed me for practically everything. According to her, I wasn't just Henry's wife. I was the one controlling him. In Ida's twisted mind, Henry had somehow become a puppet with me pulling all the strings. She said that he was blinded by love and that I had somehow taken over his life. Basically, she copied her message to Henry and sent it to Avery. As if that wasn't bad enough, she directed her anger at the children again. I expected her to be cruel to Ben, but when she started talking about Violet, it came as a complete surprise. Violet, after all, was only 7 years old. She was Avery's daughter, someone who had no part in the adult drama, but to Ida, Violet was as much of a problem as anyone else. Ida went on to say that Violet should have kept her mouth shut when she called me to tell me what she had done to Ben. She blamed Violet for exposing her and said she should never have gotten involved in matters that did not concern her. This was not only unfair, it was absolutely disgusting. Violet is just a child, and all she wanted was to keep her cousin safe by being honest. What really shocked us was when Ida mentioned that Violet and Ben would have to pay for their actions. The meaning behind her words was vague, but the threat was clear. Avery and Henry were stunned. What did she mean by pay? Did she mean emotionally? Or was it a direct threat to their safety? Nobody knew, but it was worrying. It was clear that we couldn't let this continue. Avery and Henry were in shock, and we all knew that Ida was capable of anything. We couldn't allow her to continue manipulating and threatening our families. Avery's husband Victor, 40, who is a lawyer, immediately offered his help. He knew exactly what steps to take to protect the children and the rest of us from any further harm. Legal action was the only way forward. We knew it wouldn't be easy, but at this point, it was the only option. We had tried to talk to Ida before, thinking she might come around, but it was obvious she was too far gone. She had been given many chances, and each time she disappointed us. We simply couldn't afford to give her any more opportunities to mess with, hurt, or intimidate the people we care about. So with Victor's help, we started making plans to take legal action. It wasn't about revenge, it was about protection. We weren't looking to get even, we were looking to keep our children safe. We had to make sure that Ida couldn't threaten or harm them. The choice was a difficult one, but it was clear that we had no other option. We couldn't allow Ida to continue without consequences. It was necessary to make her accountable for her actions, and seeking legal action was the only way to prevent her from causing more harm. We had been tolerant for too long, and now we needed to take action. We wouldn't let her hurt anyone else, particularly the children. The line had been crossed, and it was time for her to face the consequences of her behavior. Update 3. Hi everyone, here's another update on the situation with Ida. I know many of you have been following this closely, and I appreciate all the support. The last few weeks have been hectic, but we are making progress. I want to update you on our current situation. After everything Ida has done, the threats and the horrible things she has said about our family, especially the children, we have made the decision to take legal action. We have officially filed a case against her and feel we have reached the point where we have no other choice. Ida's behavior has gone on for too long, and we cannot just let her get away with it anymore. Avery's husband, Victor, has been an incredible help through all of this. He will be representing us in this case. I can't express how much it means to have someone like him on our side. We have already sent Ida a legal notice. This is a formal step in the process that officially informs her of the case filed against her. It also makes it clear that we are serious and that there will be consequences for her actions. It's a way of letting her know that she can't keep manipulating and threatening us without repercussions. One thing we hope for is to avoid going to court if possible. The lawyers, Victor and Ida's lawyer, have chosen to try and negotiate a solution without going to court first. However, this won't be simple. We all know that Ida can be unpredictable and stubborn, which makes it difficult to predict her response to the legal notice. We're still not sure exactly what Ida meant when she claimed that both Ben and Violet would, quote, pay for exposing her. But we're not taking any chances. We're taking every possible measure to protect our families. In the meantime, we're doing everything we can to stay strong and focused. The next few weeks will be important, and there's still a lot of uncertainty about what will happen next. We want to make sure that Ida can never cause harm to anyone in our family again. I will continue to update everyone as things progress. Update 4. Hello everyone, it's been a long time since my last update. I know many of you have been asking how the case is going, and I am finally in a position to share what has happened. The case has been ongoing for quite some time, so I was not allowed to post anything about it during that period. But now that it is all over, I can finally tell you what happened. Things started with us filing for a restraining order against Ida. We thought it would be the first step in getting her out of our lives for good, but as we quickly learned, an order alone was not enough to stop her. She did not respect the boundaries set and, in fact, violated the order. A few weeks after the restraining order came into effect, Avery and I took Ben and Violet to the park to play. We thought it would be a quiet afternoon, a perfect time for the kids to enjoy the outdoors and soak up some sun. Little did we know that it would turn into another disaster with Ida. We were in the park, keeping an eye on Ben and Violet as they ran around, when suddenly there was Ida, walking straight towards us. I remember the shock I felt when I realized who she was. Somehow she had found out that we were there. She hadn't even bothered to warn us or contact us first. She just turned up acting like she had every right to be there. We immediately asked the children to come and sit behind us on a bench. We knew some of the mothers there who were aware of our situation, so they offered to look after the children while we spoke to Ida. When she approached, she immediately started saying that she just wanted to spend time with her grandchildren. We told her in no uncertain terms that we didn't feel comfortable with that, especially considering our history. We made it clear that she was not welcome to spend time with the children. We had set clear boundaries for a reason, and we weren't going to let her ignore them. What's more, we had a restraining order against her, so she was breaking the law. Ida definitely didn't handle the situation well. Instead of stepping back like a reasonable person, she became confrontational. She started pushing Avery, and before we knew it, Avery was on the ground. It was a scary moment. Avery hurt her back when Ida pushed her, and for a few moments we didn't know what to do. Fortunately, some people nearby saw what was happening and stepped in to help us get Ida away. It was only afterwards, when we were able to move away from the scene, that we realized how dangerous the situation had been. For a while, we were afraid to take the children to public places. We didn't know if Ida would show up again, and that made us feel incredibly anxious. We wanted the children to be able to enjoy their lives and feel safe. But after everything that had happened, we didn't know if that was possible. The last thing we wanted was for something worse to happen, especially with Ida's unpredictable behavior. It was then that we realized that a restraining order was not strong enough to stop her. She had already violated it, and we needed to take more serious measures to protect ourselves and the children. Victor, Avery's husband, being a lawyer, suggested that we investigate charges of child endangerment. It seemed like the logical next step. Not only had Ida physically endangered Ben when she took him for a walk, but she had also made multiple threats against Violet and Ben. With Victor's help, we began to gather the evidence we needed to move forward. It was complicated, with many legal hurdles to overcome, and it took longer than expected. But in the end, we managed to get everything organized. We had witness statements from the mothers in the park who helped us. We had Ida's messages showing how aggressive and terrifying she had become. We had all the documentation we needed to build a solid case. So we proceeded with the charges of child endangerment. We knew this was our best chance to definitively protect our family. All our efforts in gathering evidence and preparing our case paid off. Ida was found guilty and received a 6-year prison sentence. For us, it was a bittersweet victory. We were glad she was being held accountable for her actions, but it was hard to fully celebrate knowing that this situation could have been avoided if she had respected our boundaries. At least we can be sure she won't be hurting anyone else for a while. Now that the case has concluded, we are starting to feel a sense of peace. It has been a long journey, but we are moving forward. I am so relieved that we can move on and focus on what really matters: our family. We can take Ben and Violet for a walk without worrying that Ida will show up and cause more chaos. I want to thank everyone who has supported us during this process. It has meant a lot to us. I'm just grateful that we can finally breathe a little easier.